The degree to which faux populist rhetoric and the propagandistic nature of Tucker Carlson's Fox News program has completely bamboozled a huge portion of the American right wing and even some on the left is really an important issue to be explored. There are even people who are already talking about Tucker Carlson for Republican presidential nominee in 2024. And based on just how easily people are falling for Tucker's nonsense, it does not bode well for the United States in the sense that it's clear Tucker is able to put together propaganda and disinformation that is really effective in the current marketplace of ideas and ignorance and a complete absence of thought on the American right. And one of the reasons that Tucker Carlson is so effective is that he is sort of the anti-intellectual's pseudo-intellectual. And what I mean by that is Tucker Carlson has a way of talking to people that don't understand anything or know anything, which makes him seem like a really smart, enlightened, and even borderline intellectual guy. And the reason it works is that when Tucker puts out some idea about economics, sociology, people who watch it have never studied those areas before. They have no frame of reference for comparison. And so Tucker sounds convincing and they fall for it. Whereas a more informed person would hear Tucker and say, you know, the things Tucker is opining about are completely outside of his area of expertise. They've already been widely studied. Tucker's ideas are half-baked and ignorant. And we already know about all of these things Tucker is merely, quote, asking questions about. So here's one example to really make it more tangible for you. This is from a recent Tucker episode on Fox News. And in this one, Tucker starts putting out the idea that, changes to societies are really, really bad. And it's all fundamentally rooted in Tucker Carlson's anti-immigration nationalist ideas, which he masks as a populist rhetoric. People are falling for it hook, line, and sinker. So let's dive in and think through some of what's being said.
If you're over 40, you may have trouble recognizing your own country. It's just too unfamiliar. Now, the self-righteous children on social media don't care to notice this, and when they do, they dismiss it, any complaint about change, as bigotry. But it's not bigotry. It's human nature. Abrupt change causes social chaos, always.
So there are like 4 or 5 different things there that are pretty nonsensical, but they're all thrown together and people fall for it. He says people over 40 might not recognize this country anymore. He says abrupt change causes social chaos. The reality is that there isn't much abrupt change happening of the type that Tucker is describing. It's really common as a trope for the reactionary right to say, things are changing too quickly and it's for the worse. We're losing control of what we used to have, which was better, and we are quickly on some kind of ramp to something much worse. The reality is that the country today is different than it was in the 90s, which was much different than during the 60s and 70s, which had already changed significantly from the supposed conservative golden era of the 1950s, which was already different than the sort of pre and during World War II era, where there were big changes relative to the time between the two world wars, which was already different from what the country looked like before World War I. And then before that, you're in the late 1800s where things were really different. We were pre-car, we were pre-aviation, we were in the Industrial Revolution. Things are always changing. And there's always guys like Tucker screaming that the change is too quick and it's bad, and we're quickly going down in flames, and it's ripping apart the fabric of the country. Now, it is true that most human societies, let me put it a different way, many human societies have failed, but for different reasons. And America may fail, and I'm going to get back to that. But Tucker's refrain is a tired old refrain that at this point is just boring to anyone who has studied the rise and fall of societies and civilizations. But we'll get back to that. Let's look at another clip.
Human beings develop customs and habits and generational expectations for a reason. It's not random. Continuity is comforting to people. If you eliminate familiar things overnight, societies fracture. Populations tend to explode. We've seen that happen. The last industrial revolution, in the end, provoked armed revolutions. Hundreds of millions of people died. Germany got Hitler. Eastern Europe got Stalinism. Yes, we did wind up with antibiotics in the end. You could thank technology for that, and we do. but we also got genocide and atomic bombs.
This is absolutely bonkers. This is so off the wall that it's actually hard to even know how to start picking it apart because it just makes no sense. Tucker's throwing things together there that are barely related. And here's the thing, and this goes back to what I said at the beginning of the segment. There are lots of people watching Tucker who simply have never thought about these topics in these terms. It's similar to when a college freshman that has never been exposed to any economics goes to Micro 101. And suddenly they are neoclassical economics believers. They believe that neoclassical standard economics is that it's all there is. It's right. That's it. Then, though, you start to learn about other economic theory. You read some behavioral economics, you read some Marx, you get a wider view, and then you come to realize, well, the first thing I heard isn't always or necessarily correct. On this issue, you would be vaccinated, for lack of a better term, against Tucker's nonsense if you had previously read some of this stuff. For example, the work of Jared Diamond. This is not dense academic stuff. Jared Diamond's work on why societies fail or succeed is very accessible. And if you were familiar with that, just that, and of course there's dozens, hundreds of other things, that would have insulated you, where you would hear Tucker say this and you would say, this guy has no idea what he's talking about. The arguments he's making are not based in historical fact. They're not based in anything other than Tucker's wishes as to what he wants the United States to look like. This is just one example. But you would then not be falling for just any old thing Tucker says about societal change and what hurts or helps a culture. You would be protected because you would have some knowledge from actual experts on this issue. Let's watch a little more of the clip.
There's a lesson here. If you're going to change things, go slowly. Choose the incremental over the immediate. Explain yourself as you do it. Reassure people. Acknowledge the reality of evolutionary biology. It is real. Human beings are not born to be machine components. You can't just bang out improved versions of your citizens on a 3D printer. People in real life are complicated and stubborn and hard to control. Even the most open-minded ones get jumpy when suddenly everything's different.
The truth is, just about everything is changing incrementally. It's not really changing rapidly. I mean, sociologist Tucker Carlson is feeding you drivel here. Look at healthcare. Look at how slowly it has changed. It took basically 20 years to get the Affordable Care Act. Remember, the Affordable Care Act, under a different name and put together by different people, was first floated in the early 90s. It took basically 20 years to get that. And that is a relatively modest change to the system. Look at societal views on gay marriage, which shifted so slowly over decades. Legalization in a few states, then eventually full legalization in 2015. We are only now getting to the point where more than half the country supports gay marriage, thanks to some more Republicans getting on board. So the change has been slow by modern standards. It is true that humanity in the last 500 years has changed very quickly compared to the slow evolution of Homo sapiens over millions of years. But Tucker's not talking about that in a global sense. He's talking about cultural norms in the United States. Here's the last piece of the segment.
Obviously, and you'd think it would be obvious, wise leaders would know that intuitively. If you're going to have relentless technological change, and apparently we are, you cannot inflict relentless social change and expect your society to survive. Things will fall apart if you do that. That's guaranteed. Yet that is exactly what our leaders are currently doing. They're changing everything, whether we like it or not. A new language, new values, new biology, new curricula, new social mores and hiring standards and body types. A brand new national population.
Okay, so, this is the type of rant that leads conservatism into the ideology of preserve society as it is, merely because change is scary and we assume bad. And short of that, Tucker says the new technology is mostly good, but don't change society along with it. And that also makes no sense. Anybody who has read about technological change, and here, again, very accessible, I'm going off the top of my head, look at the work of Max Tegmark, look at the work of Bill Bryson, and, I'm kind of blanking here, but there's so much accessible stuff on this issue. How could you have the technological acceleration that Tucker seems to say is good, but have no societal change either? That also is completely ahistorical. In fact, I just finished reading Cal Newport's new book, A World Without Email, where he talks about how because of email, a lot of jobs have become 30, 40, 50, 60% just managing an email inbox rather than doing the work that's sort of core to what you do. But one of the interesting things that Cal Newport talks about is that email wasn't just you have work and office culture and then in comes email, and now you have the same work and office culture plus email. It doesn't work that way. Email actually changed in significant ways over a period of 30 years, work culture and office culture and the nature of work. You can't have just you drop in a technological change and nothing changes, but Tucker wants you to believe the change is out of control and it's for the worst and it could be the downfall of society. And this is what people have been saying for hundreds of years in the US. The Industrial Revolution was going to be it, cars, airplanes, women voting, whatever example you want to find, you can find it. And it's really one of the best examples, this clip we looked at, of what Tucker does so well, but it only works effectively on an ignorant audience that has no frame of reference on these issues. One of our sponsors today is COVID Rescue Fund. COVID Rescue Fund is helping small business owners who have lost their businesses during COVID. There are over 100,000 small businesses that have had to close their doors since the pandemic began. There are many organizations out there helping businesses who are still open to stay afloat, but COVID Rescue Fund is one of the few organizations working to help businesses reopen who have had to close. COVID Rescue Fund crowdsources funds to provide grants up to $100,000 for these owners to create new businesses. I would implore anyone in my audience to help COVID Rescue Fund in their mission by donating at covidrescuefund.org. All money that you give is going to the mission, not to compensating people who work for the organization. The founders of COVID Rescue Fund are big fans of the David Pakman Show. Let's help them bring back as many small businesses as we can. The link is right underneath this video.